The Orinoco Treasure. My mother often said to me, keep away from women who use too much lipstick. Women with painted lips are dangerous. I always stare at women who have a lot of lipstick on. But I am afraid of them too. The couple at the next table were interesting. A young woman about my age, 28 or so, and a man of about 60 with grey hair and a short grey beard. The man was drunk. He kept resting his head on the table. Each time he did this, the young woman put her hand under his shoulder and lifted him up. Who was she? His daughter, Ms. Nurse. Not his wife. Surely? He was so much older than her. Each time she helped him, he pushed her away, and drank some more wine. The waiters and the other customers took no notice. I kept staring at the woman. She was dressed in red skirt, red blouse and red shoes. Even her stockings were red. Her skin against the red was as white as milk. Her mouth was beautiful, painted with lipstick that matched the red of her clothes. Welcome, stranger. The man was speaking to me. He lifted his glass. Salute. Cheers, he said. I went red. Come and sit with us. Have a drink. Tell us your name. Tell us what you are doing in Rome. He was very drunk. He pointed to the woman in red. I'm tired of her. She is very boring, very beautiful but very stupid. Aren't you, Sybil? How could he talk to her like that? I felt sorry for her, but she didn't seem to mind. Yes, please join us, she said, pushing a seat towards me. She spoke Italian with a German accent. I thought of my mother's words, women like this are dangerous. So, young man, say something interesting. Tell me about yourself. Before I could speak, his head fell forward on the table again. Sybil looked at me. He's tired. Poor darling. He works very hard. She put her hand out and touched his hair. So, she said, speaking softly as if she did not want to wake him. What are you doing in Rome? Are you on holiday? You don't look like a tourist. I'm a law student at the university. I felt very shy. She smiled. Her red lips made her teeth look very white. That's very interesting. Eduardo is a lawyer too. She touched his grey hair again. Come on, darling, she said, lifting him up. Eduardo. This young man, Miguel Sanchez, is a law student. I'm pleased to meet you, Miguel Sanchez, student of law. Have a glass of wine. He is at the university, dearest. Sybil added. Why did she have to call this old man darling and dearest all the time? I didn't like it. Miguel Sanchez, he said, is not an Italian name. Are you Spanish? Venezuelan, I replied. He stared at me. Suddenly he seemed to be very angry. It isn't possible, he said. Who sent you here? Who are you? He turned to Sybil. Did you do this? Why have you brought him here? You. He got up and ran out of the restaurant. Sybil threw some money on the table to pay the bill, and went after him. That night I slept badly. I dreamed about red dresses and red lips and a woman's hand touching an old man's grey head. For the next few weeks I kept away from the restaurant. But I couldn't stop thinking about Sybil. Perhaps I was in love with her. One Friday evening I was feeling lonely, so I went back there. Eduardo was sitting alone. I turned to go out again when Eduardo saw me. He shouted to me to join him. To my surprise, he was very friendly. Miguel, my friend, how nice to see you again. How are your studies going? Let us have a drink and talk about law. We talked for a time about my work at the university, then he asked me again about where I came from. Are you really from Venezuela? Yes. From Caracas? Well, I live in Caracas but my family come from a little town called Curiepo. I'm sure you have never heard of it. I don't believe it. He was very excited. Do you know Curiepo? I asked him. It is a very small place. Of course I know it. he said in a whisper. It is at the mouth of the river Orinoco. He looked round the restaurant before he spoke again. Miguel, tell me the truth. It is very, very important. How long have you known Sybil? I don't know her. I met her the other night for the first time. He shook his head sadly. Don't be afraid, my young friend. I'm not angry with you. But please tell me the truth. She brought you here, didn't she? She has told you about the treasure, hasn't she? Treasure, sir? What treasure is that? Don't pretend, Miguel. You know everything. I can see that in your eyes. Sybil has told you everything, hasn't she? He picked up his glass and drank some more wine. Well, perhaps she is right, he went on. Perhaps we need a strong young man like you, one who knows the Orinoco. Okay, Miguel, it's agreed. The three of us. I've got the money for the trip, Sybil's got the map, and you know Curiapo. He tried to shake my hand. I'm sorry, sir, I don't know what you are talking about. Never mind. She is a clever girl. She knows what she's doing. Then he looked at me, a little afraid. But promise me something, Miguel. Don't go without me. Every night I dream about finding the Orinoco treasure. All those jewels, all those wonderful diamonds and emeralds. Single quote. He was dreaming now. He shook his head. Sorry, Miguel. I'm a silly old man. Tell me, has Sybil shown you the map? I decided it was better not to reply. At that moment, Sybil arrived. She was dressed in red as usual, and looked even more beautiful. Good evening, my dear, Eduardo said. He touched her back as she sat down. She kissed him on the mouth, then turned to me. Hello, Miguel. We didn't expect to see you again. Clever. What a clever girl you are. Sybil, you still pretend that he is a stranger, eh? Eduardo said, touching his nose and smiling at me. Well, I know the truth. Miguel and I have had a long talk. He has agreed to help us. Come. Let us study your father's map and make our plans. Sybil took a document out of her handbag. It was indeed a map. I looked at it, expecting it to be hundreds of years old. In fact, it was a simple drawing in pencil. It was on cheap office paper. It was no more than 50 years old at the most. Did your father draw this map? She nodded without looking up. She seemed to be uncomfortable. The map showed the mouth of the river Orinoco and even my little town of Curiapo. It also showed an island in the middle of the estuary. You know this island, of course, said Eduardo. I think so, but I've never been to it. Nobody lives there, the treasure is there, my friend, on that island. Isn't that right? Sybil. She didn't answer. She didn't look at me, but went on staring at the map. I couldn't decide which of them was mad. Perhaps they were both mad. They talked a lot of nonsense about the trip to Venezuela. They talked about getting a boat to go to the island. My uncle in Curiapo has a boat. I think I promised to telephone him. But I cannot remember. I drank wine and looked at Sybil, wishing she would kiss me the way she had kissed Eduardo. Finally they put me into a taxi and sent me home. I never saw them again. I soon forgot about him and the map and the Orinoco treasure. I finished my studies in Rome and returned to Venezuela. I became a successful lawyer in Caracas. My life was good but unexciting. About a year later, I went to Curiapo to visit my family. They told me about the accident. About a month earlier, they said, some fishermen had found the body of an old man on the beach. The newspaper said that he had an Italian passport in his pocket. I was curious. I went to the police station to see a cousin of mine who worked there. He got out the report on the dead man, name Eduardo Luigi Di Rita, place of birth, Rome, Italy, age, 61 years, profession, lawyer, date of arrival in Venezuela, unknown purpose of visit, unknown cause of death, drowning, circumstances of death Unknown. What about Sybil? There was nothing about a woman. Some months later, back in Caracas, I noticed a color photograph in the newspaper. It showed a group of well-known people at an expensive New York nightclub. There was a smiling woman in the middle of the picture. She was wearing a red dress and a lot of expensive jewels. Diamonds and emeralds. She was very beautiful, but she had too much lipstick on. As my mother always said, such women are dangerous. I turned to the sports page, where I found a very interesting article about football.